I want to get a message out to all my followers on YouTube, Twitter, Newgrounds, and Gab. There's also the Google Plus community I set up a long while ago. If those of you who are listening in don't know what Gab is, it's a fairly new social media platform. It's a type of hybrid between Twitter and the most basic version of an online message board. It's a good alternative to go to in case the censorship on Twitter gets to be too much. You'll find the link to Gab, GAB.AI, in the description box. There are over 50 of you on Gab that follow my account, which is still really new, about a week old. Wow, was I surprised. As soon as I finished glancing at some of your profiles, more of you would start following. Wow. You people are awesome. There's a small number of you who are aware, as I am, about how messed up the reality outside the fabricated one is, and that's great. There's a bigger number of you out there who are Trump supporters. Those of you who do, I advise you to be wary of this man. Watch him like a hawk. Understand who he associates with. Henry Kissinger, for example. This man is definitely a pro-New World Order guy. Look for quotations by him. Through Google image search, there are a few that ought to help you see what I mean. Hillary Clinton is good friends with Kissinger. He's a mentor of hers. Some of you may remember Bernie Sanders mentioning that in one of the earlier debates.
The Secretary and I have a very profound difference. In the last debate, and I believe in her book, very good book, by the way, in her book and in this last debate, she talked about getting the approval or the support or the mentoring of Henry Kissinger. Now, I find it rather amazing because I happen to believe that Henry Kissinger was one of the most destructive secretaries of state in the modern history of this country. I am proud to say that Henry Kissinger is not my friend. I will not take advice from Henry Kissinger. And in fact, Kissinger's actions in Cambodia, when the United States bombed that country, overthrew Prince Sihanouk, created the instability for Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge to come in, who then butchered some 3 million innocent people, one of the worst genocides in the history of the world. So count me in as somebody who will not be listening to Henry Kissinger.
Secretary Clinton. Well, I know journalists have asked who you do listen to on foreign policy, and we have yet to know who that is.
Well, it ain't Henry Kissinger, that's for sure.
That's fine. You know, I listen to a wide variety of voices that have expertise in various areas. I think it is fair to say, whatever the complaints that you want to make about him are, that with respect to China, one of the most challenging relationships we have, his opening up China and his ongoing relationships with the leaders of China is an incredibly useful relationship for the United States of America. So if we want to pick and choose, and I certainly do, people I listen to, people I don't listen to, people I listen to for certain areas, then I think we have to be fair and look at the entire world, because it's a big, complicated world out there.
It is.
And yes, people we may disagree with on a number of things may have some insight, may have some relationships that are important for the president to understand in order to best protect the United States.
I find it, it's just a very different, historical perspective here. Kissinger was one of those people during the Vietnam era who talked about the domino theory. Not everybody remembers that. You do, I do. The domino theory. If Vietnam goes, China, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. That's what he talked about. The great threat of China. And then after the war, this is the guy who, in fact, yes, you're right, he opened up relations with China and now pushed various type of trade agreements resulting in American workers losing their jobs as corporations move to China, the terrible authoritarian communist dictatorship he warned us about. Now he's urging American companies to shut down and move to China. Not my kind of guy.
There are conservatives I've been following on Twitter and YouTube. They're all good people. I believe those of you on Gab are also good people who care a lot about the thorough corruption done by these soulless, parasitic people who are in positions of power. A number of you must know about a lot of what is going on with Common Core, Rotten Core. Some of you may have been familiar with Anita Hogue. She's been a freedom fighter for human civil rights and for the safety of children and their families for over a decade. More than that, I think. I've looked at a number of her articles. One of my older videos on my channel contains a podcast recording of a radio talk show called The Rauchy Stucci Show, in which Anita speaks the ugly truth about most schools. Anita and I exchange information through Twitter. Whenever I see anything related to Common Core online, I send it to her. The other big issue that concerns the well-being and safety of children is, of course, the Pizzagate pedophilia rituals. Some of who I follow on YouTube, such as Call for an Uprising, Russian Vids, New World Agenda, and no doubt the Vigilant Christian, they've all talked about that really disturbing subject. Really nasty stuff. I've heard about the CEO of Twitter giving a nod to this really bad occult business. The word is definitely out about Pizzagate. I've already looked into what Ted Gunderson, former FBI agent, talked about some months back before WikiLeaks exposed those email stashes. Please be careful to those of you who choose to investigate deeply into all of this. The Clintons are clearly a mafia-type family. These people and their buddies I cannot see as human as us, for they have no remorse about anything. They don't see us as human, not at all. In their perspective, we're nothing more than domesticated livestock to these Luciferians. I'm not saying this to provoke fear, by the way. I'm just being honest with you about these tyrants. They would take any given opportunity to send people after you. They would want to send gang stalkers to harass you. Part of me is pleased to know that you are investing the time to do your own investigative reporting on your own, to do what TV and newspaper clowns won't do. Another part of me is very concerned for your safety. Be careful on who you tell and who you share information with. Homeland Security's "if you see something, say something" slogan basically gives the go-ahead for people to spy on their neighbors and report anyone suspicious. I very well understand that the lamestream media isn't being helpful. They have put together things to cover up and confuse anyone else that relies on them for news. Excuse my language when I say fuck them. They obviously care not about what happens to these kids, and they don't want to admit they're just as bad as their political bosses and the greedy ones within media corporations. I think it would be worth it to investigate who among the fear-mongers, liars, and cowards within the press is into the occult. I'm thinking that there may be at least a few of you who are very new to the New World Order agendas and who the chess masters are behind them. I'd like to point out some other important subjects and people for you to look into. Agenda 21, which is what Common Core is part of, MK Ultra and Monarch Mind Control, David Rockefeller, Bill Gates, George Soros. There's a lot in all. The small list of subjects I mentioned should be plenty enough for anyone who's new to start with. The next podcast coming up that I have in mind will be interesting. I will begin to share information about mass mind control methods that the globalist elites do to carry out their plans. First thing I will cover about their methods is what is called controlled opposition. Knowing how our enemies operate is key to deciphering their propaganda that's been out there. Some of their methods are easy to understand. Others take a while to look through and mull over. To end this off, I will tell you something I've learned about the Freemasons, men in these Brotherhood secretive societies. Certain numbers and symbols are what they use to communicate to each other. Secretive codes. Their one-eye, triangle, and pyramid symbolisms are everywhere. In advertisements, on our paper currency, some company logos, in video games, in our movies and TV programs. Don't just take my word for it. Look into that for yourselves. Take care.